Hi guys, I'm back. In case you thought my ridiculousness was over, it's just getting started. Look at this ridiculous wig. I love it so much. Party City. Party City. And I am having a party for one by myself doing this. But I did get some new wigs at Party City, so I'm excited. I'm here to talk about Saturn stationing direct at 18 degrees Aquarius. My lesson from Saturn, I have many of them, but I guess this one right now is that clearly I don't know how to do like a dramatic eyebrow. Look at me, I look like a Muppet. I look like Jim Henson Presents Saturn stationing direct. I like it though. I like Muppets. Fun. So what's that? Let's talk about Saturn in general and why I'm in this ridiculously long gray wig. Saturn is father speaking, I guess it's hard for me too. Father time. Saturn is the karma keeper. Saturn is sky daddy to the max. He's very cold. He's very restrictive. And Saturn gets a really bad rap because Saturn's hard. Saturn does. It restricts us. It puts boundaries up. It teaches us hard lessons. It's not a super fun energy, I'm not going to lie. But for all this negative kind of talk that Saturn gets, it actually rewards us, I think, more than any planet. We talk about Jupiter, and Jupiter is great. Jupiter is the great benefic. Jupiter wants to expand things in our life while Saturn wants to restrict. So Jupiter can be kind of easier lessons. Jupiter comes in and is just kind of like a fairy godfather, and says like, oh, what's going on in your life? I'm going to expand it. I'm going to make it bigger. I'm going to give you a present. I'm going to sprinkle some fairy dust on you. That's not Saturn's modus operandi. Saturn comes in and says, no, let's talk about what you're doing wrong with this. Let's talk about lessons you need to learn. Let's restrict. Let's put in some boundaries. Let's show you the hard way, which isn't fun, right? We don't like that. We want to go through life and have everything be an easy road and have everything be, easy peasy and fun and rainbows and sunshine. Saturn just doesn't work that way. Saturn makes us look at the dark side. Saturn makes us take a long, hard look at ourselves, a long, hard look at whatever part of our life that it is transiting through, whatever house. And it teaches us the hard way. It throws down some barriers. It throws down some problems. It throws down some situations we have to work through, and usually through restriction. But the good thing is, if you do master it, if you do kind of clear the karma, it rewards us greatly at the end of the transit because we have now mastered it. We now can look at that same situation that was giving us problems, that was very hard for us, and say, I got it. I know how to deal with that. I've dealt with the worst of it, so now I can deal with the best of it. I can deal with whatever you throw at me because Saturn has taught me the hard way. And we want to make sure that we are actually paying attention to this and learning the lessons that Saturn is asking us to. Because as I said, Saturn is the karma keeper and Saturn moves slow. Saturn takes about 28 years to go around the entire zodiac. So if you're not mastering the lesson now, you got 20 more years that karma. It's not entirely true. You can work through squares and other things, but it is good to focus on the area that Saturn is going through and to make sure that you are addressing the issues that he's asking you to address. So a little bit later, I'm going to go through the different ascendants and what houses Saturn is transiting through with them. You can also listen to your sun sign because it does affect both. So listen to your sun and your ascendant. You can listen to your moon as well. But the ascendant is the actual house in your specific chart that Saturn is going through. The sun sign is kind of like the energy of your entire sign. Your entire sign is dealing with it, but your ascendant is a little more personal to you. So Saturn has been in Aquarius since March of 2020. Do we all remember what happened in March of 2020? That was a big time, right? There's some stuff going on. So Saturn ingressed into Aquarius then, and Aquarius is the sign of community. It's the 11th house. It's also gains, but it's how we deal as a community with each other, friendship groups, that kind of a thing. There was a little restriction put on us when Saturn entered it, I would say, right? Saturn taught us some hard lessons about community, about how we interact with each other. It's also Aquarius is ruled by Uranus, which also rules technology. And technology, obviously, we started to communicate through technology. Zooms, how many Zooms did you have? I had, I don't know, a bajillion. Then it retrograded back into Capricorn, dipped back in there a little bit later in 2020, asking us to look at career, asking us to look at status, asking us to look at our interaction with those two things, which a lot of people had to. A lot of people had career changes in how they perform their career, or actual career shifts, because Saturn bopped back in and said, let's, low power. Saturn is telling me to charge my phone. Saturn in Aquarius. Technology. Whew, I hope my phone doesn't die. If it does, I'll pop back on. So it dipped in there to asking us to look at our careers, and then back into the community. So we had to do a lot of looking at community and career. It has been there since going through Aquarius. It just finished its last retrograde through Aquarius. So it's kind of its last hurrah through Aquarius until it goes into Pisces in March, which is a whole nother story, which we'll get into. So we still have about 6 more months to finish up this story, to finish up our personal stories with Saturn in Aquarius, which in whatever house it is ruling for us. This particular retrograde, especially as it was coming about to station direct, was important because it was squaring up with Uranus in Taurus in the North Node. So the signs that are really, every sign is affected by this transit, but the signs that really, really are affected by the Saturn transit are the fixed signs, which are Aquarius, Leo, Scorpio, and Taurus. If you have any planets in those signs, take a look at that in your chart and see kind of how Saturn is talking to them. But it does affect all of us. So the big square that was going on, and still is, look at this, I'm stuck. Saturn makes us feel like that sometimes. I'm stuck, but then you get out of it, right? Then you clear the carb out. This hair, it's ridiculous. So it was at Aquarius, it started, scattered, when Saturn began this retrograde in June. It was at Aquarius 25, and it has been retrograding back through 7 degrees to Aquarius 18. And now it's going to go back over those 7 degrees and ask us to re-examine them and re-examine what's been going on, deal with whatever we weren't dealing with. When it's in retrograde, it's a little more introspective. You may not be quite as aware of what it is asking us to do. It becomes more aware now that it is going direct. So this particular square, and it at Aquarius 18, is in effect for about 3 more weeks. So this particular energy with this degree is really going to ask us to work through this for the next 3 weeks. So I'm going to read siren alarm that's telling us about to get into it. There's an emergency coming. Great timing. Okay. I'm going to read Aquarius 19. So in the Sabian symbols, in the degree meanings, it's up 1 degree because they start at 1 degree. As on the zodiac chart, it'll start at 0. So it's actually Aquarius 19 in these symbols. And just as a side note too, the 18th degree is a difficult degree. It's kind of a crisis point. It's ruled by Virgo. It's a little nitpicky, a little very analytical, very Virgo, but it is, the 18th degree is a tough degree. It just is. It's a tough degree. But the good news is it's only gonna be there for another 3 weeks. So then we'll move on. But the meaning of this degree, sorry, I have to read. Couldn't memorize it. I mean, I could have, but I didn't memorize it. So this is the meaning. Aquarius 19, a forest fire finally quenched. This shows rising to the occasion and quenching the flames of fires that can leap out of their boundaries and take control of your life. Doesn't sound too fun. Enthusiastic drive and zeal can sometimes set off an almost uncontrollable and destructive chain of events. You may have been caught up in such a situation, emotional or physical. There is likely no choice but to fight for control and minimize destruction. Any efforts will be, at last, successful. It's a good thing, mastery, Saturn. You are likely to come out of some life-threatening experiences with a new sense of commitment or a better understanding of the consequences of your actions. Exuberant feelings after struggles, running out of fuel, calming down, the drive to control situations, relief after long battles with unruly emotions or thoughts, fire hoses. The more negative part of this degree is underneath, giving up and losing, self-defeating delight in drama, situations that produce rubble, destructive passions or emotions, smoke, one-eyed focus, mania. Intense degree, right? It's an intense degree. A little bit more on that. This is from a different astrologer on the degrees. That's from the Sabian Symbols by Linda Hill, by the way, if you want to look it up. Okay, another interpretation is, we will face crises. Before they arise, we may think we could not cope, but whatever comes to us is within our capacity to handle one way or another. It's the mark of faith that we believe that this is so, and perhaps it is faith that makes it so. Life is certain to present challenges that we must rise to, because if it does not, then we cannot rise. It's very true. On occasion, therefore, we must pull out all the stops and do whatever is needed to get back on top of things. We could be easily, could be so easily seen as misfortune, can be turned around to become a successful adventure in the development of much broader competence and social responsibility. Aquarius. Dealing with problems is what matures the individual, because handling precarious external situations has weighty impact that cultivates gravitas, and so attracts the confidence and support of others less capable. More than that, there's a deep-reaching feeling of profound relaxation after such an extraordinary event. This has a truly regenerative, I think I need to regenerate that word, regenerative, there we go, effect that renews vital forces, underpins optimism and trust, so that a sense of certainty grows that whatever the future throws up can be dealt with satisfactorily. So it's an intense degree. It talks about, and like, don't get scared. Obviously there's different layers of this. Not everyone's going to be forced into crazy crises, but there's probably some stuff that's going to come up in the next 3 weeks that's going to feel a little tense, a little crisis-esque, a little, how do I deal with this? Where is this coming from? It can be really intense emotionally. It can be really intense physically. It can be really just intense, very intense. And it also could be revisiting something intense that happened in the last 6 weeks or so. So that crises or that stress might be coming back, probably is coming back, to ask you to take another look at it. On top of this, it is squaring Uranus at 18 degrees, 19 degrees in these symbols, which I will also read. Taurus 19. This symbol shows the rising of a new place to be, a new country, or somewhere to strive for a new life. It implies that you can find the extra spark to create a brand new original opportunity. This picture is the beginning of something that holds enormous potential for the future. There is much work to be done, developing this into something fertile and productive. A whole new field of activity coming into light. What you've done in the past has led you to this, but these new beginnings need to be met with a fresh sense of purpose and possibility. Enormous potentiality emerging. Sudden eruptions of talents or fields of endeavor, new trends and new ways of being. On the more negative side of that, it can be continually seeking new worlds, not finding a place and cooperation in the existing one, moving on constantly without finishing up the old, fickleness. One's view of the future has changed. How are we going to do that? How are we going to move our view of the future forward? So this is, it also can be like a test to rise up, a test to become stronger, set more boundaries. Anything that needs to reach a conclusion, anything that feels a little shocking, is probably going to be addressed in this. And especially since Taurus, it's the North Node. So the North Node is a karmic destiny point, and it's for all of us right now. So it's intense. So Saturn, especially in Aquarius, and Uranus rules Aquarius. Saturn used to rule Aquarius. It's a secondary ruler. So there's a lot of Saturn going on. Saturn kind of squaring itself with this. It is about asking us to move into the future, no matter what comes up, no matter what bump in the road comes up, no matter what crisis we're faced with. Because Uranus is over there saying, you got a new future to go to. You got new things to create. You've got new super abundant, super potentialities that we're looking to tap into, which we want to do. That's what we want to do. So it's actually a good thing. So anything stressful that comes up, and I'm going to make a video on this tomorrow, but it is going to be a little stressful because we also have the solar eclipse tomorrow and then the lunar eclipse 2 weeks after that, still on that fixed axis on Scorpio and Taurus. And eclipses are major shifts in energy. They're major moments that come in and change things. So that's coming. I don't mean that in a scary way. They can be beautiful. Eclipses can be really great new energies. They can be tough new energies too. Just saying, the energy set up, there's some shifts coming. So let's talk about Saturn through the houses, through your ascendant. Right now, if you have Saturn in the first house, this is if you are an Aquarius rising specifically, also if you're an Aquarius sun. Saturn going through the first house. The first house is traditionally ruled by Aries. It's me. It's ourselves. I have Saturn in the first house natally. So Saturn has always been putting pressure on me to kind of figure out who I am, to own myself, to reinvent myself, myself has been restricted in order to master self. But if you've got it going through there right now, it can put pressure on the way we look, on our bodies, on our self-perception. Definitely having more confidence in ourselves, having more confidence in who we are, what we are, how we present to the world. No matter what that means to other people, what it means to us, to own that. It really rips away like superficial things. Anything that is superficial that you're doing for others or doing for reasons that are not truly your own, Saturn's going to restrict that and say, no, that's not for you. Are you working on you? Work on you. Who cares what other people think? Work on you. It helps you. It's the beginning of a story. Every time a planet goes around the zodiac, it starts in the first house, and that's the beginning of a story. So it helps us set up new structures for the next 12 years of our story. It's mastering the self so we can move on to those other houses and complete that 28 with Saturn, your story. So it's actually a super exciting time if you've been feeling restricted in your own self-expression, in the way you look, in the way you feel, any body issues, health issues. Work through them. You got 6 more months to work through it and to really master self so you can go on to the second house and start creating that next part of your story. This is really about setting down the foundation for new endeavors as the most you version of you that you can be. So that's for Aquarius. In the second house, which is for Capricorn risings or Capricorn sun, the second house is traditionally ruled by Taurus. It's all about value. It is about how we value ourselves, how we value others, how we value things, money. And money comes into other houses as well, but kind of how we get the money, how we value it, what do we value? Again, both in self and in external things. So this can all be about finding direction, which way you want to head. Definitely in finances, like how you want to create money, what money means to you, what matters more, money or time? You can answer that, I can't. It also makes us deal with issues of external validation, kind of like in the first house, but a little more intensely in the second, because you need to find that within, self-worth as well, and not necessarily outside. It can put down harder structures to work really hard at what you want, at what you value. Again, that is up to you. For some people, it's career. For some people, it's creative endeavors. For some people, it's self-worth. Whatever it is, how do we value that? How can we work harder towards it? And how can we then take that and use it in the world? How can we go forward and say, okay, now I know what I value. Now I know my own value. I know what I can give back to other people as well. How am I going to use that? What is it? How am I going to use it? So really getting crystal clear on that, on what it is you value, on what it is you want to be doing, on how it is you view yourself. And again, how you can structure that back into the world to create the rest of your story. And definitely, don't worry so much about the external validation. It's all about you, babes. It's all about you. Who cares what other people think? Find yourself and be that. Even if it's this, right? You gotta do it. I gotta do it. It may not be who I want to be. No, it is who I want to be. But it may not be who the external world wants me to be. That's for sure. But it is who I want to be. So I'm doing it. Okay, moving into the third house, which is for my Sagittarius risings. Saggy suns too, but Sagittarius rising. The third house is it's traditionally ruled by Gemini. It's all about our close community, siblings, communication. So you've done that work on self, you've done that work on value, and now how are you going to put it back into the world? How are you going to output that? What are you going to produce? How are you going to produce it? How are you going to communicate it? How are you going to get the information? This, in the beginning of this transit, can be very worrisome because you might worry about how you are communicating. Are you communicating well? Are you communicating what you want to communicate? How you want to communicate it? You can have a lot of problems with your close community, with siblings, with acquaintances, a lot of communication problems. A lot of things can get lost in the shuffle. And you also can have this desire and hunger to learn more, because it is about learning, it is about information. And Gemini is duality, so there might be lots of things that you want to be learning. This hair. There might be lots of things you want to be learning. So it'd be hopping all over that place. It's also about day-to-day things, so that can be a little bit harder. You might be like, what am I doing? What is going on? You might have some problems with just travel, or you might constantly be getting to work late, that kind of thing. Yeah, day-to-day can be a little bit harder. And now it's getting closer and closer, and it was closer to the end of the sign. As it moves closer into your fourth house, that's an angle your IC, which is your soul, your home, the real deep you, that maybe you don't want to show other people, but that is really your heart and soul. So it gets a little bit more intense as it ticks up. So the next 6 months can feel really intense because it's getting closer to that home base. And it's asking you, what information have you learned? How does it affect you? What do you want to communicate from that information? So whatever you've been learning, whatever new things you're thinking about going towards relationships with your close community, how are we going to use that? How are we going to communicate that effectively and truthfully? Heading into the fourth house, Scorpio. This is for my Scorpio ascendants and Scorpio suns. So now we have crossed into that fourth house, which is home, family, and the IC, our deep selves, our soul, who we are deep inside. So this can be taking that communication, what you've learned, and making sure it's going through the filter of our deep inside worth and how we want to achieve, both internally and externally. This can be a slow transit, so it can deal with moving. It doesn't always have to, but it can. For me, it did when Saturn transited my fourth. It did move. A lot of things changed within family for me. But it doesn't always have to be that. But it can be a reworking of what you consider home, what you consider safe family, home spaces, that kind of a thing. It's a lot on working with that's more the physical, working with your roots, working with family dynamics, working with, okay, what do my parents want me to do, and what do I want to do? Or do I have issues with my mom and dad? Do I have issues with my deep self? Let me work through that. So it can be really kind of slow and trudging. Trudging, is that a word? I don't know. Trudging, I don't know. Something like that. It can feel really slow. Because it's asking us to examine that, to examine what is family expectation, what is what I really want to do. Who am I really? What like family wounds, what kind of stuff like that am I carrying with me that I need to let go? Yeah, definitely letting go of attachments from the past, for sure, and moving into the new phase of whatever's going on in your life. It's really about getting to know yourself better, quite honestly. It's about getting to know who you really are on a deep inner level, in your own lens, not the lens of your parents, not the lens of your family, not the lens of society, you. So it can be really slow. There can be a lot of roadblocks. There can be a lot of trouble with self. But as you get closer to the end, which we're getting to, babes, it's about self-empowerment. It's about really owning that and going forward with it, which is awesome. It's a really empowering transit at the end. As I said, Saturn rewards us at the end if we do the work. So I know it's a tough transit, but own it and you will feel so much more empowered. 5th house for my Libra risings or Libra suns. This is where it's currently transiting for me. 5th house is traditionally ruled by Leo. It's a really fun house. It's one of my favorite houses. It's basically about like how you entertain, how you have fun, your ego. It can be like flirting and dating too, but it also can deal with children. So maybe some of you are becoming parents or dealing with things with kids. It's definitely a possibility. But definitely what do you do for fun? Do you go out and party all the time? Maybe you shouldn't party so much. Maybe you should party more. Maybe you should lighten up. However the transit is affecting you with different angles and you yourself personally, just asking you to look at that, at fun in your life, at your talents too. Leo is all about talent. Leo is about our inner sun. Are you wasting your talents? Take a good look at them. Like, what do you have to offer to the world? What is that? Are you using it? Because you should use it. We all have talents. Use them. Have fun with them. Get a little wacky. Get a little weird. You gotta. And again, it comes back to that. Are you thinking about how others view you, or are you actually doing you? Because you should be doing you. Definitely, what makes you different? What makes you unique? And again, like with fun hobbies, that could be, have you always wanted to crochet sweaters made from alpaca hair? I don't want to do that, but maybe you do. Have you always wanted to do that? Do it. Have you always wanted to make weird videos and wigs about astrology? Do it. Do it. Use your talents. Use your creative talents. Go out there, have fun. Maybe have a little bit less fun. If you were having too much fun, you can only answer that. For me, it was about maybe a little less fun, right? Rein it in a little bit. But it's actually that's also a very empowering transit. And it's great. Saturn's asking you to figure out who you are and how you have fun. Take an easy Saturn transit when you can get one. Please, I'm trying to. And I'm still feeling it. I'm still like, ugh, Saturn. Even in an easy house. Okay, moving forward into the 6th house, which is Virgo. So Virgo risings, Virgo suns. The 6th house is traditionally ruled by Virgo. It's a little double Virgo. Double your pleasure, double your fun. I don't know about that. I'm just kidding. I dog on Virgos so much, and I am one. I love you, Virgos. I do. I just, we hate each other. Not each other, ourselves. We have that very self-defeatist kind of thing going on with us sometimes. As it transits your 6th house, it's very much about pressure in work, habits, daily routine, and health. Don't get scared by health, because usually if there is a health issue that comes up when it goes through the 6th house, it's a minor one. It's not like, oh God, terrible. It's like, hey, have you been drinking too much? Have you been eating too much cholesterol? That kind of a thing. Like, let's sort this out. Let's get healthier. Let's treat our bodies a little bit better. Let's drink some more water. It's not like super scary stuff. It's just more day-to-day stuff. Making sure that you hold yourself accountable in terms of work, in terms of daily routine. Are you doing the things you need to do to maintain all of this work that you've done through the first 5 houses? Are you finding the structures, habits, and routines that support that? Yeah, it's just very much about productivity, setting up routines that work for you, and structuring that so that you can, all those talents that you honed, all that ego work that you did in the 5th, you can really propel that forward, that you can really make it work for you, that you can set up a good situation for yourself. And I would say if this is transiting for you, definitely just make sure that you're trying to put in healthy daily habits. It's about to go into my 6th house, and I'm trying to get a head start on it now because I'm not the healthiest of people. I eat a lot of Taco Bell, and I need to cut that out. I need to cut that out when it gets to my 6th house, or Saturn might have some hard lessons for me. So yeah, just get those routines in place, babes. So the first 6 houses are very much about us, our inner world. As we reach the 7th, we're going more out into other people, into our relationships with the collective. So yeah, we hit the 7th house, and it's a little bit less about us. It's always about us because we have a relationship to the outside world. But it's more how we deal with others. So for the 7th, this is for Leo risings and Leo suns. The 7th is our house of relationships, one-on-one relationships, relationships to other. It's the traditional, like, this gets a little confusing because this also does pop into the 8th, but it's the house of like marriage. But this doesn't have to be marriage. It doesn't have to be a romantic one-on-one relationship. It usually is, but it doesn't have to be. It can be your relationship to a very close friend. It can be your relationship to a business partner. It's one-on-one relationships and commitment therein, because we make a commitment in the 7th house to whatever it is, to another person, to a business partner, to a friend, something like that. So this is asking us to look at our relationships. If you're in one, to look at the current relationship you're in. Is it working? Is it not working? What needs to be adjusted? What have you been not wanting to take a hard look at and taking a hard look at it? And as I said, that can be with friendships, business, whatever. You can feel a little lonely. You can feel a little isolated with Saturn because it's restricting. It's restricting our relationships when it goes through it. This can be a really hard transit. It can be a really hard transit. A lot of relationships can dissolve, but they can also be made stronger if you really do the work. So there's that as well. But Saturn's gonna ask you to take a look at those personal, close relationships that you have committed to. And say, is this working? Is it not working? What can we do to make it work? What changes do I need to make? Do I need to get out of this? Do I need to change the way I am interacting in this relationship? It can bring up a lot of potholes that we didn't want to see in relationship to others and force us to deal with those and to restructure or to change the way that we are interacting with that relationship. So if anyone's gone through a breakup or, is feeling tension, I'm sorry. But it's a good time to re-examine that and to look at it and to find some mastery in that. But it's not a super easy transit. So I'm sorry for anyone who's got that going on. In the 8th house, I mean, none of these are super easy transits. It's just, we take relationships really, it's funny because we should take our relationship to everyone super seriously, but our relationships to others, because it shines back on us, those mean a lot to us. So that can be really personal and really tough transit. So 8th house, traditionally ruled by Scorpio. This is for my Cancer risings or Cancer suns. So this is also a relationship, but this is after you've made the 7th is commitment, marriage, traditional relationships. This is intimate. This is intimate relationships. Maybe it can be hidden relationships. It can be things that you don't want other people to see. It deals with power, intimate relationships, which can mean sex, But it also can just mean like really intimate relationships that you have with people that like other people may not know so much about, or you don't want other people to know so much about. Compulsions, addictions, our deepest desires, like our hidden, like, ooh, I really want this or that, and attachments. Our attachments we have to things, people, addictions of any kind. It also deals with other people's money. So debt, either owed to you or that you owe, control, and libido. So this can be a tough time for sexy times. It can be a tough time for addictions. It can be a tough time for how we're using our power. Are we using it to our greatest good, for the good of others, or not so much? It also can make us take it, because Scorpio also rules death. It can make us take it can be one of those transits where we're like, holy shit, like I'm getting older. Whew, I don't like this. Or just really dealing with the fact that like, hey, one day we're gonna die. So it's gonna be a stressful transit too. It's gonna be like, oh my God, I feel old, I feel scared. But what is that doing? Just like Pluto, that is asking us to own our power. Like, yeah, you are gonna die someday, but how can I own my power? I'm not dead yet. How can I own it now? How can I look at these intimate relationships? Are they serving me? Are they not serving me? Definitely addictions, like anything that and that could be anything. Like it doesn't just have to be alcohol, drugs, sex, that kind of thing. It can be addicted to your phone, addicted to coping mechanisms that aren't working anymore. So it's definitely a deep, intense restructuring of how we deal with our own power, how we deal with intimate relationships, deep-seated attachments that are no longer serving us, and also giving up a little bit of control, because we don't have control over a lot of these things. So submitting to that and taking a look at control. It's kind of a rebirth. So in the 9th house for my Gemini risings or Gemini suns, this is all about self-improvement, study, spiritual goals, higher learning. So you may be beginning a new course of study. Maybe you're going back to school. Maybe you're thinking about, you want to do something different with your life, or you have a different view on spirituality. It certainly doesn't have to be spiritual, but it's looking at your future. It's also the house of future. It's traditionally ruled by Sagittarius, Jupiter, and improving that in self, improving whether that is studying more and a new topic that you want to learn about, or getting more spiritual, or just kind of where you want to go, what you want to learn about, what's the direction that you're headed, what is your relationship to higher realms, whatever that means to you. What is adventure for you too? This can also take a look at like our self-defeating attitudes and saying like, kind of carrying over from that 8th house, like what's no longer serving me? What's the direction I want to take? Where do I want to go? Anything that you have blind faith in is up for kind of a little like, let's take a look at that. Like, are you putting too much faith in X, Y, and Z? Do you need to place your faith elsewhere? What's motivating you? What do you want your future to be? It helps us mature. It helps us, again, take all of those lessons that we learned about self, then how we're relating with others, and how do we want to mature that? How do we want to move on as a more complete version of self into a future that we want, into a future that excites us, and a future that we can have faith in, strong faith in. Let's make sure that the right things are motivating us, that kind of a thing. So for 10th house, for my Taurus risings, Taurus suns, 10th house is traditionally ruled by Capricorn. This is all about where do you want to go? Your career, but also your status, and how you're projecting yourself out into the collective. So less like it is with how we deal with ourselves, but how are we putting that back out there? Like, how are we being viewed? What is our standing in society? And are we caring too much about that? The answer to that doesn't have to be yes. It can be no. But this can be big career shifts. But this also can be taking a long, hard look in the mirror about, are we caring too much about what the collective thinks about us? Of course, you got to care a bit. It can't be a complete rogue. Kind of you can be, but, not in a bad way. where do we stand within that? Are we putting too much pressure on our standing? Are we heading the direction we want to head? What do we really want to do for a career? This one can be a lot about getting the rewards for doing all of that work, or facing the consequences, or Saturn saying, well, that's not who you really are. You're caring too much about society and standing. So you gotta start caring a little bit less. It's gonna be a little slap in the face sometimes, not always. But it is definitely redefining personal goals, taking off those rose-colored glasses, and taking a good long look at self, how we interact with the world, what we're doing, what we should be doing, what we want to be doing, and not caring so much about what other people think. Because we got to care about what we think. You can also feel really burdened by career if you're not on the right path, or responsibilities, whether that's like domestic, your own whatever, any kind of responsibilities you have, work ones, family ones, home ones. It's really, the main question is, are you being true to yourself? You can answer that. Make sure you're answering truthfully, because if you're not, Saturn will know. So be true to yourself. And then into the 11th house, which is traditionally ruled by Aquarius. So we got like a double dose here. This is for my Aries risings or Aries suns. So the 11th is the collective, our friendships. It's also the house of gain. So this is how do we fit in with others and groups. There can be some main shuffles that go on with friend groups, with work communities, with home communities, all that kind of stuff. Networks, you can feel a little alienated sometimes. You can feel a little, and this kind of goes for all of us because Saturn is in Aquarius, feeling a little alienated from what you traditionally thought were your friendship circles. It can highlight superficial relationships, any relationship that's not really working for you. More of like friendship, not like one-on-one relationships. That's 7th house. It also can make you a lot more serious about your friendships. If there's friendships that really are helping you, it can solidify those. And as I said, it's the house of gain, wish fulfillments. So it's about making sure that you are making sure that those internal wishes and the rewards you should get for working so hard on your personal path are coming to you. So just taking kind of a good hard look at friendships, networks, and are you getting what you want to be getting? Are you on the path that you want to be on? It can be a little bit of an alienating transit, but again, at the end of it, it's great because you have new either recommitments to friendship bonds or a new friendship group that's a little more in line with this new you, with this 28-year transit that Saturn's been taking, with who you are now, which is different than you were 28 years ago. And then finally, the 12th house for my Pisces. For my Pisces babes, Pisces rising. So the 12th house is always a little difficult. This is rounding up this story, right? The story that's Saturn has been making for you as it's transited for 2.5 years through every house. This is the last house before we go back into that first house and we start it all over for a new cycle. So this can be a little existential crisis-y. The 12th house is self-undoing, all hidden things. The house of sorrow. But listen, I've got a ton of 12th house placements and it sounds really scary, and it can be, but it doesn't have to be. It can be super, super, super healing and super empowering. So this can be a hard like mental health transit. You can feel a little depressed. You can feel a little having to deal with your own demons, having to deal with like, what have I done? Who am I? What's going on? And that's hard. But again, mastery, if you can master it, you're gonna feel like a brand new person. You're gonna have this brand new fresh start. It's the end of a cycle. It's definitely a spring cleaning of our psyche. It's facing our own demons, which we all have plenty of. It's not fun work, but getting rid of old fears, getting rid of our own internal thoughts that are no longer serving us. It's basically clearing out the junk. Clearing out the stuff that we don't maybe necessarily want to look at, especially about ourselves. We're drag racing outside. It definitely also can be, it's a very spiritual house as well, and just like hidden things. So getting more in touch with yourself, your unconscious. What are you telling yourself that's not your ego telling you it? That is more that, just that like internal spark, our soul, right? Our unconscious. It's also the collective unconscious. So what are we paying attention to? How many times am I gonna do this? Are we paying attention to what our inner world is telling us, and making sure that we're not defeating ourselves, making sure that we're not making traps for ourselves to fall into that are unnecessary. And as a 12th houser, I understand that. I do it all the time. And it sucks. It's not fun. So work on that, because we can be our own worst enemies, and we don't have to be. We can take those darker parts of selves, those harder parts to look at, and transmute them into something more positive, into something that will serve us much better on our journey. Because if you are a Pisces rising, when it pops into Pisces in March, it's going to be back in that first house. You're starting this whole journey over. It's kind of like the final grade point, checkpoint report card. But be empowered by that, because Saturn in the 12th can actually have really great results. In any house it can. But the 12th especially, because it can give you this beautiful brand new slate to start off with, as the story starts again. So that is Saturn stationing direct. As I said, the next 3 weeks, just watch out if anything crazy comes in, or you're feeling like overwhelmed or kind of crisisy. And I don't want to scare anybody. That does not mean it's going to be a major crisis for everybody. But there might be some pressure. There might be some points where you just feel a little overwhelmed. But know that squaring that Uranus that wants us to have this great brand new start, this great honing of our talents, that crisis is not to knock you down, or that stress is not to knock you down. That stress is to show you can get through it, to show you've got this. So it's actually very empowering. So if that comes up, just know that it's temporary. It's an energy we're working through. And it's just Saturn asking us to master it. That's all. And I will be back tomorrow to talk about working in tandem with this. The solar eclipse tomorrow, which is Cazimi with Venus and the Sun in Scorpio. It's actually a good eclipse. Well, eclipses are always got a lot going on, but it should be a pretty fresh new start for us. So I will see you tomorrow. Enjoy your Saturn return. Remember, no matter how hard it is, it's about mastery. It's about getting those gifts from Saturn. It's about doing the hard work to get the hard-earned present of having mastery over it, which is a great present to have, I promise. All right, I'll see you guys tomorrow.